Does that help Tesla? I mean, you had Tim Waltz, who's a huge jerk, right, you know.
On a dark night in Shanghai, a private jet quietly lands. No cameras, no journalists, no official delegations. On board is a name that always attracts attention, Elon Musk. But what if this isn't just a routine visit? What if this moment hides much more than meets the eye?
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
Immediately after the plane lands, mysterious signals begin to flash in the sky above Shanghai. A few hours later, as if by magic, encrypted data begins to leave Tesla's servers in Texas, heading for remote corners of China. But then, just as it began, everything stops. No explanation, no official comment.
Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
At the same time, something strange is happening in the digital space. Suddenly, as if by magic, the voices supporting Trump disappear. Posts disappear. Engagement drops sharply. What is this? A random algorithm error? Or something much more serious?
Running around on stage with the Tesla stock price, where the stock price had gone in half. And he was overjoyed. What an evil thing to do. What a creep. What a jerk. Like, who derives joy?
That's what we're going to reveal today. We're going to tell you a story that no one wants to tell openly, but which is whispered behind closed doors. Elon Musk, the most powerful tech mogul in the world, finds himself at the center of a global conspiracy involving the Chinese government. And all of this is undermining the future we have come to take for granted.
I mean, the things that he's doing is not trying to make America better. He's ruining our infrastructure, every department in our government. He's ruining, and he's right now destroying our economy. He's taken away all of our allies. We're a pariah in the world.
A new look at political games that are played not with tanks and diplomatic agreements, but with billion-dollar empires, information and hidden alliances. This is not just a struggle for influence, it is a war for the future, for control over data and perception. China and the US, Musk and Trump, and everything that goes on behind the scenes of world politics.
We've accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
He praised all the domestic actions he has taken so far on immigration.
And I deployed the U.S. military and border patrol to repel the invasion of our country.
And spending cuts.
We are draining the swamp. It's very simple.
Don't believe everything you're told. Today, we're going to explore how one wrong move by a billionaire could overshadow the future of an entire nation and change the course of the 2024 election. Listen carefully. This could change everything you thought you knew about freedom and democracy, about who really runs the world.
Well, you will hear people over in Europe say the new Model Y, the Juniper, could be a difference maker, but that's been in that market now for more than a month. And you would think that you would see a greater snapback if it's going to be a difference maker. Look, we could be wrong. It could be a difference maker once you get the sales for April, May, and June. But when you have a country like Norway, I think the sales were down something like 11% there. I mean, that's a very savvy EV consumer in Norway. And that's long been a strength for Tesla. Very small market, not huge volume, but I think almost all of the vehicles they sell there are electric. And they embraced Tesla long before others. And, you know, the reports there are not encouraging.
What is Musk hiding? How and why did he make these secret deals with Chinese officials? And what is really going on behind the scenes of global political battles? Stay with us, because what you are about to hear may change your perception of who is really pulling the strings on the world stage.
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
In early May 2025, a private jet belonging to one of Elon Musk's affiliated companies quietly landed in Shanghai. This was not just a routine business visit, as is usually the case with global technology leaders. There were no official delegations, no press conference, and certainly no mention of the visit on Musk's social media accounts. When ordinary officials or well-known businessmen visit such key cities, their visit is usually accompanied by loud headlines in the press and interviews. But this time, everything was different. The plane arrived at night, and the airport where it landed was not surrounded by journalists and did not even have the slightest mention of the importance of the event. However, a few hours after landing, it became clear in Shanghai that something was happening. Columns of high-profile Chinese government vehicles began moving toward one of the most secure terminals located within a strictly guarded complex where only the most secret meetings usually take place. There was no official press among them, and apparently no politicians were seen. But it soon became clear that the meeting was not actually about Tesla, Starlink, or even SpaceX. Suspicions soon arose that these talks were in fact political, and not just political, but strategic. According to information obtained from an anonymous source working in Tesla's Asian division, Musk was allegedly negotiating with high-ranking Chinese officials on how to counter Donald Trump's growing influence on world politics. This was against the backdrop of Musk's rumored desire to do everything possible to reduce the impact of a possible second Trump term on Tesla's business, especially with regard to his proposed sanctions against foreign electric vehicle manufacturers and tariffs on products coming from China. This prompted Musk to reportedly negotiate with Chinese authorities about the possible use of his technologies in China's interests.
371, most were saying 350 to 360. Now they're coming in at 336,068. Production of 362, 615. So for some point of reference here, you're going back to Q2, maybe Q1 of 2022 in terms of the last time that they had production this or deliveries this low for one quarter. So again, Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
That's horrible. Can I just ask Phil, how about the Cybertruck? How's that doing? You got a little inventory there in the Cybertruck?
What became even more intriguing was the information that began to emerge a few weeks after these meetings. Allegedly, Tesla began developing an influence plan in which Musk agreed to use his X platform, formerly Twitter, to curb the growth of anti-Trump accounts, increase the popularity of supporters of other parties, and boost politics using algorithms created with the participation of Chinese specialists. It seemed unbelievable, but reports from international journalists showed strange patterns that suspiciously coincided with the actions described. Accounts supporting Trump began to experience increasing problems with the visibility of their posts in news feeds, while opposing political forces began to gain attention and visibility much more quickly. Against this backdrop, some anonymous sources from Tesla also began to point to strange internal changes. Several senior employees signed new confidentiality agreements relating to international affairs. Suspicions began to grow that Musk was negotiating with China on much more important issues than just electronics.
Back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration. Some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
But the most shocking revelation was that this scheme could be much deeper than just influencing the election. With a range of global assets, including Tesla, SpaceX, and X, Musk found himself in a key position where every mistake or manipulation could affect millions of people and the political landscape of entire countries. China, for its part, was increasingly concerned about growing anti-Chinese sentiment in the US. With each passing day, the threat of Trump as a possible president became more real. His political stance and actions against Chinese economic interests forced Chinese officials to act cautiously but decisively. Musk, a businessman with no apparent political affiliations, became their choice to, if not directly interfere in US politics, then at least help weaken Trump and his supporters through his technology companies.
Worse than expected, 336 and 68 vehicles, 336,068 vehicles delivered in the first quarter for Tesla. For a point of reference, the street was expecting, the street account was expecting, based on analyst expectations.
So far, this remains only a hypothesis, but since May 2025, Musk has demonstrated his quiet role in global politics more than ever before. China, for its part, continued to support this strategy, encouraging statements in its official sources that emphasized how he was a wise diplomat capable of seeing business above politics, trying to distance himself from direct accusations and emphasizing the need for global solutions. Nevertheless, these words had a clear hidden meaning, and many analysts began to suspect that Musk could become an unofficial conduit for Chinese interests on the American continent. After secret meetings in Shanghai, where Elon Musk held talks with Chinese officials, the situation only became more tense. This was not just a business visit. The strategic steps taken during these negotiations began to emerge, not only in the business sphere, but also in politics. Despite his official silence, Musk found himself at the center of a global game aimed at changing the balance of power in the US and the world as a whole.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
A few weeks after these meetings, new evidence began to emerge that Musk could have played a key role in manipulating digital platforms, in particular Platform X, formerly Twitter, with the aim of influencing the political situation in the US. Reports emerged of strange changes in the behavior of accounts supporting Trump, a sharp drop in engagement, the disappearance of posts, and shadow banning all began to raise suspicions. At the same time, accounts that previously had little reach began to unexpectedly gain popularity. Experts who were closely following these processes began to wonder whether this was the result of outside interference aimed at influencing the electoral situation in the US. Musk had always spoken of his commitment to freedom of speech and democratic processes, but in reality, the situation was different. Finding himself at the center of global technological and political processes, Musk became someone who could not only control information flows, but also influence the political landscape in the country.
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. A lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
What was going on behind the scenes? Musk continued his role as a successful entrepreneur, but behind this outward activity lay a much more complex political game. Unofficial sources in the Chinese government have confirmed that Musk began participating in strategic negotiations aimed at supporting political forces capable of weakening the influence of Trump and his supporters on the world stage. It is claimed that Musk, aware of the threat to his business in the event of a Trump victory, agreed to use the X platform to strengthen the influence of the Chinese authorities. And this was not just about business interests, but about direct interference in the US elections.
Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, "Of course, I'm going to respond." And tonight, right here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse now on the president's tariffs.
This move was calculated for the long term, and unlike the overt interference seen in Russia in 2016, Musk's actions were more subtle and sophisticated. Instead of using hacking attacks or overt manipulation, Musk employed the same tools that make his platform so successful: algorithmic influence. According to several anonymous sources, a project was being developed within X to test new algorithms for optimizing user engagement, but these algorithms were used for political purposes. They did not simply simplify the platform's operation, but deliberately manipulated public perception by changing trends and the content that became popular among users. The X platform, like other social networks, used these algorithms to manage information, but now they were being used for political purposes.
Over the last couple of months. But the other thing that this could potentially be is an attempt at readjustment or correction by the Trump administration, in that one of Trump's closest kind of allies and supporters, and someone who's clearly very influential in the administration, is coming out to kind of push back against the recently implemented policies. So I'm thinking, or maybe hopeful is the right word, that this might be a signal that the administration is considering walking back some of those policies.
Musk himself continued to emphasize his independence from political parties and claimed that he did not interfere in political processes. However, his silence as the situation became more tense was alarming. He was known for making sharp public statements, including on political issues, but this time his silence raised many questions among political analysts. Why did one of the most vocal public figures suddenly decide to hide from public attention when his actions and meetings became the subject of discussion in the international press? After all, Musk has always been one of the most vocal supporters of freedom of speech and self-expression. But now that his personal interests were at the center of political games, his behavior looked increasingly suspicious.
Hey Diane, this investigation really just beginning, and one of the key elements will of course be the surveillance video, and investigators potentially have a lot of it to work with as they try to figure out what caused this fire. We know that surveillance footage has been turned over, including video from each of the cars, which could prove vital to understanding what happened here, because each vehicle has its own camera system that works even when the car is off, and 16 cars burned in this fire, and right now investigators don't know what caused it.
It was at this point that intelligence services and government agencies entered the game. In the US, quiet work began to gather information about Musk's meetings with Chinese officials. Security services began to compile reports on possible election interference, but everything remained within the realm of rumors and unconfirmed data. It was important not to cause public concern, but also not to allow a situation to develop in which one person, regardless of their intentions, could influence such important processes as elections in the world's largest democracy. While federal agencies tried to operate within legal and political constraints, a game was unfolding behind the scenes in which Musk became an important player.
But they are not ruling out the possibility that this was arson. At the same time, as you just mentioned, there are groups that have been organizing ongoing and peaceful protests at Tesla dealerships around the world. These demonstrations targeting Elon Musk and his affiliation with the Trump administration. Also, Italy's prime minister is said to be close friends with Musk, and there were reports that Teslas have been vandalized in her hometown in Italy. Diane.
Against this backdrop, Chinese officials continued to support Musk, particularly through their state media, which praised his entrepreneurial approach and global business vision. In one editorial in the Global Times, he was described not simply as a businessman, but as a global citizen who is not bound by political frameworks and can be used to achieve strategic goals. This was no coincidence. China, long concerned about Trump's possible return to power, was looking for a way to neutralize this threat not through direct confrontation, but through more sophisticated methods. Musk was undoubtedly the man they needed. He was the ideal candidate to secretly support Chinese interests on the American continent without provoking public protests. Musk, in turn, benefited from Chinese-backed agreements, including new commercial opportunities such as granting Tesla rights to new battery technology developments in China.
KTLA Samantha Cortese joins us live with more on the wave of vandalism in protest of Elon Musk and his role in Washington. Sam?
Hi, Sharon, Micah. The ATF and FBI are collaborating with federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate acts of domestic terrorism surrounding Teslas.
However, despite external attempts to maintain calm and balance, things were far from simple. Musk, according to rumors, faced growing problems in the US as early as the beginning of 2025, antitrust investigations, possible sanctions, and growing pressure from political opponents, who demanded public explanations from him. And the further the negotiations with the Chinese authorities went, the more difficult it became to keep the situation under control. Political interference became a reality, and the question of who would ultimately control the elections and global technology became even more pressing.